Happy Finish Friday, everybody, and it's Good Friday. Today I'm going to be showing you how to be able to recreate the look that I did on this adorable little chair. I want to show you a secret. Look in here. You're going to notice I got this little chair and it was a bargain, but look at it. The seat was broken. So I knew that I wanted to be able to have it. I didn't want to pay the money to have the cane seat fixed. So I just made a foam cushion. I cut it to fit the size of the seat, and then I laid this adorable little skirt that I custom made to go over it. So let's get in closely if we can. Can you see the finish? Let me pull some of this stuff out of the way. So can you see the detail in this chair that I showed you on social media earlier this week? See how it's been worn through, and what is showing underneath is that actual dark color of the stained wood. You're going to get a lot of pieces that you can buy that are dark stain, and they're going to start basically like this. So on most of these pieces you are going to have a little bit of maybe lacquer or a finish that's on it, and that's okay because we're going to come back and seal the milk paint later. So on a piece that you're going to have, it's going to start like this, just like my little chair did. You're going to want to do several steps to get to this final look. The first thing I did is I created some cracked gesso. So I'm going to put this cracked gesso directly on top of my stained piece. Now, as many of you know, I will always tell you, before you put this on, you need to make sure you clean your stained piece with Clean Slate. Clean Slate is going to get any wax off. It's going to get an oily residue off. It's not going to take the lacquer off. It's not going to take the shellac off, but it will get it to where it's clean, it's residue free, and you're able to put on your cracked gesso. All right, so I'm going to take a little bit of cracked gesso out. It's going to come in a powder form like this. And the good thing about it is it has indefinite shelf life. So I'm just going to close that back up. And I went to our hot water dispenser, and I've gotten some hot water. Don't use cold drinking water out of the refrigerator. You want to stay away from this because it will not mix that well. So you want to make sure to get some hot, warm water, and you're going to pour a little bit in here. And you only mix up enough for a particular project. It'll have about a 2-week shelf life, but you want to make sure that you only mix up what you need because it will go bad. The great thing I tell people about our milk paint processes, it's almost like shopping in the grocery aisle because they're all food grade materials. And there's not another product like this on the market. It does not exist. This is proprietary. I've created it myself, and it will crack and give a beautiful finish to your milk paint finishes. Now, I created a little bit earlier. Let me brush that away. I made some earlier, and let me show you what it looks like. It's fairly thin, but you want to make sure if you get foam on top, make sure to get the foam off like this and set it aside. I don't want you painting with foam, and you can make it as thick as you want, but I will tell you is that it's going to dry very, very hard, and you want to make sure that you don't put too much on because it's going to just really be tough to sand and get it smooth. So I'm going to load my brush up, and you can paint after you've cleaned it directly on top of your surface. You're going to be painting directly on top of the stained piece. Now remember my little chair, it was stained. Now, we're coming to you live Central Standard Time in Memphis, Tennessee. If you have some questions, I'm more than happy to answer them for you. So I've got my cameraman that will ask me questions. But we're good. Okay, so you want to just make sure that as you're applying this, it's going to be a little thinner than normal. You don't have to make it as thick as your normal paint. And after I put on one coat, I'm going to let it dry about 30 minutes. And then if you want, you can put on another coat. What I normally do though, I will sand in between just very, very lightly with 400 grit sandpaper. Just to make sure that it's nice and smooth. Because once this dries, it's going to go completely white. This is your gesso. So I'm going to set this aside, and I've got some that I had done earlier. And let me wipe this off just a little bit. So I've come back just a little bit and lightly sanded it. This is actually just one coat. I did not do two, but it's up to you depending on what you want it to look like. And then I'm going to take my milk paint. Now, we do have a special priced bundle today that includes your Amalfi Coast Blue, which is gorgeous. It's one of my favorite colors to work with. And I'm going to take out a little bit of the Amalfi. Today, though, because I want to show you the exact color that I created with my little chair, I'm going to mix a little bit of Noir in it. So, the cool thing about milk paints with ours, they aren't synthetic pigments. They're natural pigments that we get from Provence, the south of France. And when you are mixing your color, I want to show you this. When you are mixing your colors, they will dry down to this color. Once you add water, they're going to go darker and you're not going to be able to tell. But I'm going to mix it together like this. And it's going to make that a little bit darker blue. I'm going to add just a little bit more black. When you mix your color, make sure that you mix enough to paint your entire piece. So you may want to just make a quart of paint, and one bag will make you about a quart. So if you tint it, you'll be perfectly all right to be able to paint this little chair or nightstand. Now, I think I'm going to add just a little bit more, because remember, the paint is going to dry down to be the color it is in its dry form. Once we add water, it's going to go a little bit darker. And the other thing, just like when you're mixing with your cracked gesso, make sure you use warm water. Don't use cold water. It's going to take a lot longer for this to mix. So this is just some warm water that I got. See already how that dark blue color is coming out once it gets wet? So I'm going to start to mix it. A lot of times too, I'll put this in a mason jar, put a lid on it, and then shake it really well. And always, always, always make your paint the night before. That's going to allow it to really absorb. You're going to like the consistency of it. So I'm going to stir this up just a little bit, because you want to make sure that you get all of the grits out of it, that it's not, that you don't have some pieces of the pigment showing. So I've got a little bit of got a jar here. I'm going to pour this in. I want to be able to just show you. I'm going to put the lid on it, and then I'm going to shake this up. Now, when you're shaking it up, if it gives you some foam, make sure that you pull the foam off. All right? So that way I can pour it back in my container, and it's nice and smooth and ready to work with. All right, so I have some that was already done before we started. Now here's the other thing. While you're working on milk paint, you want to make sure that you are constantly agitating it. Because what's going to happen, it's going to separate and the pigment is going to fall down into the bottom of your container. So just make sure that you're agitating it and getting that back up in there. So when I'm painting, I'll constantly kind of agitate it in the bottom. Hold on just a second. Yes, question?
Stephen asked, what's the best brush to use for milk paint?
Stephen, I like working with a chip brush, just a natural chip brush. I like the Amy Howard chip brushes because they're about twice as thick. But working with a natural brush like this, it goes on nice and smooth. Look at that. Isn't that yummy? Now, if you've never worked with milk paint before, as you're mixing it and following the directions, it's 1 part water and 1 part powder. So you see it's much thinner than average paint. The other thing that you need to make sure that you do is that you want to make sure you're working on a flat surface with milk paint. I would not want to be painting this on a vertical surface. So make sure that it's lying down flat. That way you can get down in the crevices and it's not going to drip. You know, the other cool thing about it, a lot of people don't realize in working with our Toscana Milk Paints is the fact that these are all natural. There's no VOCs. You don't have to worry about health problems as far as inhaling fumes or anything. There's absolutely no odor. Look at that beautiful color. Do you not love that? That's a combination of the Amalfi Coast and black, which is we call Noir. Look at that. It's laying down so beautiful. Now, the other thing that you need to remember, because if you're just now tuning in, remember I said I would prefer for you to make your paint the night before. It's going to go on a lot excuse me, it's going to go on a lot smoother. You're going to like the coverage better. Love that. All right. So are we good on questions? Is everybody good?
Another question.
All right.
Stephen asked, is the hog's hair brush a good brush to use for milk paint?
Yes, the hog hair brush, great question, Stephen. The hog hair brush is a great brush to use. Our glazing brush is another great brush to use for milk paint. But if y'all are asking, Stephen's question is the hog hair good? This is our hog hair brush. Yes, I love using the hog hair for this. So you can use it for wax as well as milk paint. The only thing is, I just want you to make sure that you keep wax brushes, and milk paint, painting milk paint brushes. It's good to keep them all separate. All right, so there's a part of me that just enjoys, that wants to be able to continue to paint this, but because of time, I want to make sure that I show you the antiquing process. All right, so I'm going to set this aside. It's only going to take that about 20 minutes to dry. You can hit it with a hairdryer if you want to speed it up. But this is the piece that's already dried. Same thing as far as painting it. So imagine it's just like my little chair, that if it was stained previously, that I've come back on top of it with the Legno Gesso, and now I have laid my paint down and I'm getting ready to antique it. So you're going to need some antiquing glaze. Let me pour this, let me get some of this out of here. Okay, I'm going to put some antiquing glaze in my container. Now, as always, I tell you to have 2 containers because you want to clean your sponge as you take off some of the paint. So I'm going to take my natural seaweed sponge and I'm going to dip it down into my antiquing glaze like this. Make sure that it's completely saturated and then offload it while just making sure that your sponge is completely full of the antiquing glaze. And then you're going to come back where you would want to distress it. Now here's the great thing is you're not going to have to use any sandpaper because that doesn't give you a natural wear. With the antiquing glaze and the process that I'm showing you, it's going to actually start pulling the paint away and you're going to love it. So you have to kind of saturate it first. It's not going to happen just instantly. So I'm going to come back and I'm going to pull this down and saturate it. So that way it has a tendency to just kind of sit here for a minute and soften the paint. So if you're working on a piece, you'll work on the top maybe to the chest, or maybe you'll work on the drawer. Work on one area at a time because I don't want you to work on it too much to where it'll start to dry on you. The other thing is I want to make sure that you work on a vertical surface. Don't try to work on this up and down. Milk paint is best painted lying flat, so you're going to have to work on a drawer or a door or whatever on a flat surface like this so you've got control over it. Now, I'm going to come back with a combination of just a lint-free rag and my natural seaweed sponge, and watch how I'm going to start to come back and pull away the areas on the edges. Can you start to see that right there? Let me see if, can you start to see where now that stain is starting to poke through? So I'm just gonna start to pull it. Different surfaces are going to pull away at different percentages. And it has to sit here for just a minute to kind of start releasing. The more gesso and the more paint you put on too, the harder you're gonna have to kind of press on it. So, and it just has to sit here for just a minute. Now it's starting to release. Can you kind of see that on the camera? Can you see the wear, how it's starting to come up? And remember, this is pretty dry. It's gonna dry down to this gorgeous blue color. And I'll be honest with you, I don't have my assistants in here today. I need to be able to dry this. Let me see, can I have a hairdryer really quick? Do we have one? Yes.
What's the purpose of cracked gesso?
The cracked gesso, what a great question. The cracked gesso, it acts as an agent to crack basically our milk paint. It will give us that beautiful white color that will show through, that you'll see on natural pieces over a period of time that are really old. I've got a piece over here I want to show you real quick. So this is a little gold piece from a long time ago. This is probably about 100 years old. Do you see this gesso underneath? That is actually, it's a calcium carbonate. It was act as a primer to go under gold leaf, but this allows you to be able to have that white look underneath your paint as well as your gilding. So I think we lost our light just a little bit. So I'm gonna dry this. I want you to be able to see how the color's gonna change. And that way, look at this. Can you start to see it? I'm going to dry this because I want you to see how it's going to turn into that gorgeous blue. There's our light. That gorgeous blue. You're going to see some of the variances of the actual paint that we're working with. Wow, I'm loving this already. See, that's why I had to kind of dry it so you could see it. When you're working with the antiquing glaze, it's going to pull that paint away. It's also going to give you a mottled effect on the actual paint that you're working with. Let me do just a little bit more. Now, if I was working on this piece, I would probably spend at least 30 minutes just kind of coming in, antiquing, making sure that it's worn, that I'm really happy with what I've got. I'm rushing this up for sure. So I'm going to focus on this area right over here. I'm going to dry this. And then I'm going to show you how to be able to antique it with the wax. The cool thing about it is it's a very fast process. The milk paint is going to dry really quickly. I'm going to come in here and dab this just a little bit. Are there any questions? This is literally, we're waiting for paint to dry. I'm going to dry this just another second, and then I'm going to go in and show you the process as far as actually waxing it now. So what I'm loving, and I hope you can see it on the camera, this is the area that I've kind of focused on. See how you've got the white showing? See how I've got the stain that's starting to show through? Is that showing up, Mr. Cameraman? All right. All right, so I'm going to turn that off. I know that's loud and you don't want to listen to a hairdryer. And now I'm going to, I would normally work on this whole thing. I'm just got this little area right here because I want to be able to show you how to wax it. So when your milk paint is completely dry after your antiquing portion, I'm going to want you to take 2 waxes. Now, you're going to need to have a light wax and a dark wax. This is gonna make a big difference in your finish. The other thing is, you cannot leave it like this. You've got to seal it. A lot of people ask me, is it important for me to seal milk paint? Absolutely, you always have to seal milk paint. So the other thing I tell you is always get 2 brushes. Okay, so there's a question, why do you have to seal it? Because it can be activated again by water and it can make the finish release itself. So you've got to be able to seal it because it's not impervious to cleaners and things. You've got to make sure that it's cleaned. So, you've got to make sure that it's sealed. Yes?
Susan asked, because chairs aren't flat, are there any tricks to get the finish right?
Because chairs aren't flat, are there tricks to, well, that's why I'm working on a carved surface. As far as, you see how I'll come in and I'll just pounce my paint in. I'll make sure that when I came back and I'm distressing it, I'm just focused on these high areas. Just like my little chair over here. And every piece is gonna be a little bit different. Can you see this? As far as when I was wearing it, see that gorgeous brown that came through? It's the same thing with this. As I came back with my antiquing glaze and I started to pull that paint away, it made that beautiful stained color that was original to this little chair start to show through. So, but I've got to come back and seal it, otherwise my milk paint is gonna come off if I try to come back in with a cleaner, anything that's water. Yes?
What if you remove too much paint?
I love that question. If you remove too much paint, all you have to do is take your brush and come back and add in just a little bit over where you took too much, let it dry, come back and touch it back up if you want to take a little bit more off, and you're done. Sometimes that's a happy surprise. Sometimes I'm happiest when that happens. So yes, no, that's beautiful. I love that. And what a great, great question. All right, so I'm gonna load up my brush, my first brush. Remember, make sure you have 2 brushes. Don't ever use your dark wax brush for your light brush and vice versa. So, and as always, as I've always told you, I'm just gonna offload a little bit on this on my paper. Always offload it. And so I'm focused on this area over here because I haven't antiqued all this. Now look at this. Can we get I wanna get a close-up shot of this. Look how I'm kind of going here and there. I'm not saturating it because look at the variance of the color. Can you see that? Is it showing up on the camera? I want a variance of color in my finish. Look at that, guys. Is that not yummy? Love that. That way, it's kind of going a dark and light. I'm getting my highs and lows on this. It's beautiful. Now, the other thing is, I need to make sure that I fan this. So I'm just gonna fan it just a little bit because it needs to come to tack. Please, please, please make sure that you do not put your dark wax on until this has come to tack. So I'm gonna fan this just a little bit. Are there any questions? We're good? Okay, guys, I'm gonna expect some great projects out of you because you're seeing this. Let me get a piece of metal. I can get just a little bit more fanning with this because I want to make sure that this comes to tack before you touch it with the dark wax. Otherwise, we're going to have 2 different waxes. So let me fan this just a little bit more. And as a rule, this will take probably about 20-30 minutes touch. Now, I'm speeding this process up just a little bit because of time, but please make sure 20 or 30 minutes goes by. And then I'm going to use my second brush. Make sure to always use a separate brush. And I'm going to offload it just a little bit. You never, ever, ever go from your dark wax onto your surface. And you never use the dark wax by itself. You always have to use these 2 guys in combination with one another. Never use the dark wax by itself. What's the whole point of the dark wax? Is to be able to give some detail, some age to the edges. That's going to make that piece pop. So let me show you. So as I've got this, I'm just gonna take a little bit here. I've offloaded it, and I'm just focused on these edges. Can y'all see that? So you're gonna start to see the highs and lows. See where this is lighter down in here? You've got a medium value starting to take place. Look at that. And then that edge is starting to pop. Can y'all see that on that camera? Isn't that fab? Look at that. So I'm just turning my brush kind of here and there, making sure this dark wax portion is just on the raised parts. Love that. Love, love, love. Yes.
I think I asked how do you soften the wax when it's too dry in the tin.
Oh, okay. All right. So if your wax has had a tendency to dry out, all you have to do is take a little bit of clean slate, and a lot of times I'll just moisten my brush. Uh-oh, let me see. I'll pour a little bit in here. I'll pour a little bit of clean slate in at my top of my container, and then I'll dip my brush down in it like that so it's kind of saturated. And then I'll just come back into my wax, and that should soften it. You can also take a little bit out. You can actually microwave it. You can set this on top of a hot plate, and it will remelt it. But if it's gotten kind of hard, I'll just take a little clean slate and soften it up, and that allows me to be able to use it again. All right, are there any other questions? Are we good? So guys, can you see that already? Look at the antiquing process. Look at this side over here that I didn't really work on yet. And look at the major difference from antiquing it. Remember, using the antiquing glaze does give you a mottled effect. It allows you to be able to wear the paint so it pulls some of that through, and that it allows you to be able to get ready to put your light wax on and then your dark wax. Now, if this is definitely an option, and I will show you on my little chair here. I did, because it was so carved, I did come back and add in the crevices in this area right here. I did add some dust of ages. So let me just show you if that's an option that you want to be able to do. So you need to make sure that your piece is almost completely dry, but not quite. And I definitely don't want to put it on while it's too wet. You're going to come back with another clean brush. That's why it's good to be able to have a pantry with 4 or 5 of these brushes in it. So you'll dip your brush down into it, offload it like this. And then you can come back and pounce it down in the crevices like this. And then you're going to get a lint-free rag, and you're just going to buff it. Look at that. Guys, can you see that? You're going to buff it just on the high point, like that. So that dust of ages stays down in the crevices and adds to the patina. And then you buff it, and it gives it that natural waxed finish that you would get on an antique. Love that. I don't want you to like take your finger like this and go down in the crevices where, and if you want to a little, if it bothers you, but the main thing is I want you to be able to get a beautiful hand buffed sheen that it will look just like my sweet little antique chair that I did that I got so cheap. So remember, these pieces won't be perfect. Like mine wasn't. It had a hole in the cane, and I just made a piece of foam and put it on top with just my little skirt like this. So I hope you see just how easy it is to be able to use not only the cracked gesso to be able to crack your milk paint finish, but to be able to customize the colors of your milk paint. One of my favorites is this blue-gray that I used, the Amalfi Coast and the Noir. I mixed it together. Make sure to mix all your paint at one time that you need to be able to paint your project. And then allow it to dry about 20 or 30 minutes. You can come back and do the antiquing with our antiquing glaze, and then make sure to always, always, always seal your milk paint with the light wax. And if you want to add some age, you can add the dark wax and the dust of ages. Have an incredible finish Friday, everybody. Good Friday and a happy Easter. See you next week.